everyone, my name is Pavla and I am a postgrad student here at LSE. And in this video, I'll be sharing with you how I saved on my first 3 months of living in London. Undeniable costs to moving to a new country or city. Travel expenses, rent, one-off purchases when moving into your new accommodation, and so much more. There is already a lot to worry about at the start of the school year, so you definitely do not want to overwhelm yourself when you actually start your studies. So I'm here to share with you ways you can think about financing and budgeting, and how I've saved over my first few months living here in London. My first tip for you is to do some research. And the way I've done this is to talk to some locals. That would be friends and family who live in London or in the UK. Another way I've done this is to do some online searches. And of course, that did include watching LSE Student vlogs, just like what you're doing right now. But the one thing that I want to highlight in this first tip is that I attended a budgeting seminar by LSE before the term even started. This was part of LSE's pre-welcome events, and I definitely suggest that you look out for these. This was important for me because it gave me a student perspective of living in London, especially in terms of finances. It reminded me to be proactive by planning out my budget. And that brings me to tip number 2. Plan out your budget early on. So by attending the seminar, I got a realistic example of what a student budget may look like, and it also alerted me to things that I haven't even thought of, such as getting insurance and having an emergency fund ready. It also gave me the opportunity to ask practical questions about living in London, and that includes student banking, groceries and supermarkets, commuting in London, phone service providers, and so much more. So my advice is to definitely attend an LSE budgeting seminar or a similar event if you are able to, but you can also find this information on the LSE website. Specifically, you can check the page under Student Life, and it's called London on a Budget. On this page, and just like in the seminar, LSE will provide you with a realistic range of what cost may be for you. But what I did is I observed myself for the first few weeks of being here, and I noticed some patterns and trends with the purchases I was making. And that really allowed me to figure out what numbers would work out for me. So for example, after the first few weeks, I figured out how much I needed to spend on groceries on a weekly basis, and I also figured out what the best low-cost phone plan would be for myself, depending on my needs. So in relation to tips 1 and 2, do not forget that LSE does have resources available to you even before you arrive on campus. And that includes pre-arrival events, online resources on the LSE website, and of course, your LSE student vlogs. And now the third way I've been able to save on my first few months here in London is that I've walked everywhere. In the past 3 months that I've been in London, I've only been on the tube and on a bus like a handful of times. London is definitely a very walkable city, especially if you live quite close to campus or are in central London. So my tip for you on this is in relation to choosing your accommodation. When you are comparing rents and locations of student halls or other types of accommodations, I would definitely factor in transportation costs as well. Sometimes you may be under the impression that you are saving on rent by living quite a distance away from campus, but when you factor in your daily commute and other additional expenses, like having to buy coffee and food on the go, then your perspective on this might change. And that brings me right into my fourth tip of how I've been able to save, and that is I prepare most of my meals. What I learned right away is that the cost of living in London is quite high compared to basically everywhere else. And that definitely includes eating out. I already mentioned buying coffee and food when you're out on campus or elsewhere exploring, and those things can add up quite quickly without you even realizing it. So what I did when I first arrived is to get myself what I now consider to be my essentials. My rice cooker, a pot and a pan, and other things I need for cooking. They actually did not cost me a lot, and the investment, yes, I will call them investments, has been so worth it, because in the long run, they've helped me save. So I try my best to lessen my costs by doing some meal prep. And this really does not have to be anything crazy over the top and super organized. I am definitely not a cook by any standards, but it's really helped me budget-wise to do a weekly grocery run, pick up some things that I can make into meals for the week, and to buy things like snacks and drinks as well. The final way I've been able to save up is that I got not just 1, but 2 part-time jobs. I'm going to talk about this 5th one with a little bit of a disclaimer saying that, of course, first and foremost, we are here for our studies. So it is definitely up to you what you think you can handle, if you want to have a job at all even. But for me personally, it has helped budget-wise. I think following that first week of settling in, I immediately started to go on a job hunt, and I was looking for one that would be flexible and understanding of my position as a student. Also, looking for a job was actually something that I knew I wanted to do while I was here in London, so I already mentally prepared myself for that. Luckily, within the first month, I got my first part-time job working at a restaurant, and another perk there is that I get free meals, so even more saving for me. And of course, I ended up getting the second part-time job of being an LSE student content creator. And this is something that I was already very interested in doing because, as I shared in my first vlog for LSE, where I went on a solo trip for reading week, I mentioned that I do run a personal vlog as well, so I thought that this job would be perfect for me. So I am fortunate that these two part-time jobs fit into the criteria I was setting out for myself, because as I mentioned, the main purpose of me being here is of course for my master's program. And if you are an international student like me, of course do not forget to be aware of your visa restrictions. That is very important. So those are some tips I can share from my personal experience of how I've saved in my first 3 months of living here in London. I hope you found those helpful. Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. See you on my next video.